Thank you, Ranger Allen. I would like now to acknowledge all of the survivors and or their families and the families of those who were killed who are in the audience. If you could please raise your hand so that we can recognize you. Thank you. A number of local, state, and federal officials who have helped raise the awareness about this National Historic Site are represented here today and will be providing some brief remarks. Congressman Mark DeSaulnier has taken an active interest in this memorial and its legacy in American history. Please join me in welcoming Congressman DeSaulnier to share a few words. Yes.
Thank you all. Colonel Zetterwall, Acting Director, all of the officials here, Mayor of Concord, and all of you, the family and friends of Port Chicago. It's wonderful to be here. Although I've only been a member of the United States House of Representatives trying to replace the irreplaceable George Miller for 7 months, I have had the distinct pleasure of representing this part of the county since 1994 as a county supervisor, a member of the state legislature, and now as Congress. So I have had the occasion to come out here often. I want to thank Congressman Miller, who, if it weren't for his efforts, we would not be here today. He assured that this memorial was here and continues to support our efforts. His former Chief of Staff and Leader Pelosi's former Chief of Staff, John Lawrence, who we honored and listened to last year when we had this event over at the Rosie the Riveter facility, who has been very helpful with me in our efforts to continue George Miller's good work and necessary work to make sure what happened here is remembered and that there is justice for what happened here. So to all of you, thank you. We in California tend to think of the future and the present, and too often we forget that we have a rich and sometimes troubled past that we have to keep in our memory. As the great American historian said, Jorge Santayana, he said, for those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. Imagine for a moment what it was like 71 years ago at this moment right here. Professor Allen, his wonderful book about what happened here, imagine what it was like for those sailors, African American and white, coming down to this pier where body parts were still floating all over this area, where the two ships, one of which had been eviscerated, no longer existed, and the other had been split in half as she prepared for her maiden voyage. Imagine, as Ranger Allen said, that fateful day that was 3 weeks away when Mr. Small was told, and they came to that crossroads at Mare Island, that you could call them right and they would know to go to the parade ground and things would continue in their ordinary day, or those fateful command words, 2 words, call them left, and everything changed, in addition to everything that had happened in the moments that July 17th and what led up to it and everything that happened after that. In the best moments of this country, one of the things that makes us extraordinary as Americans is that we learn from our mistakes, that we do as Santayana suggested, that we have made mistakes in our history, but that we accept them as no matter how painful. And some of those lessons are more painful than others, and probably amongst those are our relationships with our African American sisters and brothers. We're still very troubled in the news every day. But what makes America best at its best moments is to acknowledge that pain and go through what many of us believe in our own personal belief system is redemption. So here today, when we come and celebrate and for a moment reflect on what happened here, but what led up to what happened here, what Professor Allen describes in his book when he interviewed Joe Small 40 years later, and Small talked about, and it's a wonderful little quote, paragraph quote in that book about the inevitability of what happened here and the metaphor about this explosion being inevitable and what happened after. So in that inevitability, my belief system is the inevitable redemption is that we acknowledged the sacrifice of everyone who served this country, everyone who served on this pier and in this facility, but we honor all of them by accepting that there was a grievous injustice that occurred here, and the way to correct that is exonerate the people who were charged and, I believe, inappropriately convicted. And the last thing I'll say is Thurgood Marshall is a relatively young man, long before he became a Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, before he did the Brown versus Board of Education for the NAACP. He came to Treasure Island to help represent the 50 men. And he has a remarkable quote, again, thanks to Professor Allen. He said, "It's not about my 50 clients. It's about our commitment to our moral creed." Nothing could state it better. It's our current commitment to our moral creed in this country that we rectify what happened here and we honor those who served here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman DeSaulnier.